we also have our science critic, okay, and this fellow in this talk today, he talked about space-time. Is there such a thing as space-time, four-dimensional space-time? Is it a thing? Can we visualize space-time? If space-time is a concept, can we visualize a concept? That's more or less what this fellow was talking about when he criticized one of my videos. And here it goes. Let me show you his part of it, okay? And then we'll discuss it. Here it goes. Pay attention. The questions and issues to be addressed in this rebuttal include: is general relativity space-time a rational physical interpretation for gravity? And is it possible to visualize a mathematical concept such as space-time?
I mean, there is space-time, and the sun does warp that space-time, so that does cause the Earth to move around the sun. So there is a justification. I suppose we can try and visualize it, which we have done with space-time. There's a whole lot of different visualizations for that. But again, whether you can visualize it or not has no bearing on what's actually happening.
Okay, so this fellow believes in space-time. He believes that's an explanation, a mechanistic explanation for gravity. Okay, so he defends space-time. And so let's first go with an expert on space-time. His name was Stephen Hawking, died a couple of years ago. This is what Steve had to say in his book, A Brief History of Time. It is impossible to imagine a four-dimensional space. Okay, and so he says you cannot even visualize this. But people attempt to do so anyways, and here's a typical scenario that people present. You'll see this quite often, just about everywhere. Just put space-time in Google, especially images, and you'll find something along these lines, okay? And here you'll see it, the moon going around the Earth. Why? Because the Earth pushes down space-time. That's that blue checkered ground on which the Earth is sitting there. This ridiculous two-dimensional platform or canvas or whatever, that when the Earth pushes downwards turns into a three-dimensional canvas, you know, trampoline, fishnet, whatever you want to call it. And none of that is four-dimensional. So we're not looking at four-dimensional anything. The best we can see there is three-dimensional, okay? And this is the explanation that they have for gravity, why the moon doesn't fall, run out of the solar system or out of the Earth. It's because it's rolling around forever in this depression in space-time. So on the one hand, we have Mr. Hawking. He says you cannot visualize space-time. And here you have these people, and they say, look, we can visualize it. And what we're visualizing is nothing that is remotely related to four-dimensional. It's a two-dimensional warped canvas that turns into three dimensions at best. And so that's not space-time. Space-time is four-dimensional. Where are the four dimensions? Okay, so yeah, you cannot visualize four dimensions, but this fellow believes that it has been illustrated. Yeah, he probably saw something like that and says, oh yeah, I saw space-time. No, you can't see space-time because, first of all, it's a concept. And he doesn't even realize that. He doesn't realize that the word time is a concept. You cannot, what are you going to illustrate for time? A second, a minute, a year? What are you going to put for time on the screen? What are you going to show people? Okay, so you cannot visualize time. Time is the fourth leg of space. Time, obviously you cannot visualize a concept such as space-time. Here these people are illustrating it with this ridiculous two-dimensional canvas that turns into 3D. Again, it's not a representation of the 4D at all. Hawking tells you you cannot even imagine four-dimensional space-time. So I don't know why these people are even trying to illustrate space-time. Why don't they just do math and stay with math? That'd be fine. We wouldn't even hear about them. But see, they want to tell you that they understand why the moon doesn't fly out of the Earth or out of the solar system, out of the orbit, right? Or the Earth out of the sun. They tell you that they know why it doesn't, because space-time is warped. And you say, well, show me the picture. And they say, well, we can't show you, it's an analogy. See, this is the problem. The problem is their analogy is you cannot even visualize, you cannot even imagine their analogy. That's the problem. They cannot illustrate it. And so, yeah, it's important to be able to illustrate these theories because then you can see the mechanism. Right now, we can't see the mechanism because we see the mechanism for a three-dimensional object, not for a four-dimensional one. Therefore, we don't see we don't see the analogy. Is a flat disk rolling around flat land an analogy also for four-dimensional space-time? Okay, what's keeping the flat disk from flying out? Okay, in two-dimensional flatland. Okay, is that an analogy also? So again, these people have no answers. And when you try to do that, when you try to use these pictures to try to simulate it, they laugh at you anyways. And this is from the establishment. It says, understanding gravity, space-time is like a rubber sheet. Um, Massive objects distort the sheet. And the student says they distort because they are pulled down by what? And the teacher says, well, space-time is like this set of equations for which any analogy must be an approximation. So yeah, they don't have an explanation. Their analogy is worthless garbage. Okay, straight said the way it should be said. It's garbage. Okay, it's poppycock. But the question is, why do they even attempt to give a physical interpretation if they know they can't even visualize what they're saying? I mean, they should stick to equations and leave it at that. But when they try to give you an explanation, that's when they cross the line into physics. They tell you they know because they did their equations, and all they're giving you is their personal interpretation of their equations. And for that matter, we can introduce God and the angels and spirits as well. No problem. Okay, so what is the conclusion for this space-time thingy? Okay, here we have it. In physics, it is irrational to reify a concept and treat it as an object. Space-time is a mathematical concept. As such, it is irrational and misleading to represent it with a fishnet. In general relativity, gravity is equal to warped space-time. In physics, only objects can be warped or bent, because warped is a word that can only be applied to objects. When you say that the hammock is warped, hopefully you have a hammock. Hopefully you have a thing there. Okay, and these people are warping a concept, specifically the concept known as time. How do you warp time? Okay, how do you bend time? How do you break it in half? Okay, and therefore general relativity does not have a physical interpretation of gravity. And what you should ask yourself is, why did the relativists even try to give a physical interpretation for gravity or for how this universe works? If they have a description, mathematical description, no problem. Just keep it within math and don't ever bring it into physics. It's when they cross the line into physics that they have allowed people like me to question what they're proposing. And when they lose, when they have no way of defending themselves, they say, well, that's philosophy anyways. So they dismiss it anyways.